Let's join Mark Penaluna. He's CEO of the Werribee Football Club, and their situation, we know through Mark Stone, has been one of improvement over the last 2 or 3 seasons, and I think they're in a pretty good place in their part alignment with North Melbourne. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Finey. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thanks, and thanks for joining in the discussion that becomes more and more interesting by the day. We learnt earlier in the week confirmation that in 2013, Richmond will field their own side in the VFL. We know Essendon are going that way. Potentially as early as next year, Western Bulldogs might be standalone. Northern Blues effectively is Carlton in the VFL. We see Geelong, we see Collingwood. So, from your perspective, explain how the part alignment with North Melbourne has, in these tumultuous times, seemed to flourish.
Oh, look, certainly since the day we became part aligned with the North Melbourne Football Club in 2008, I think that both groups have gone out of their way to respect each other's wants as far as the North Melbourne Football Club, obviously to win games of football, and they've gone through a rebuilding stage within themselves the last 2 or 3 years. But the important thing from our perspective is Donald McDonald and John Lamont and Brad Scott and the rest of the administration have really respected the Werribee Football Club, our history, our culture, and respecting the people around the club and the players. And you know, if you have that sort of respect for one another, and ultimately you're going to be successful and enjoy each other's company and hopefully win games of football. Respect
is a key word. We know you're not involved with the Williamstown Football Club, but that seems to be a core of the problem that has been there, that this year, Williamstown and Western Bulldogs haven't been able to see eye to eye on a number of matters, players being pulled out at the last minute and possibly players being told to play in certain positions, has made life pretty hard for the Williamstown Football Club, whose main goal it is still to go out there and win a premiership in the VFL, whilst it seems as though Brendan McCartney and his teaching philosophy at the Western Bulldogs runs contrary to that.
Well, I'm not close enough to understand exactly what goes on between the Western Bulldogs and Williamstown, but certainly I think that if you get increased communication and dialogue between both groups, whether it's a board level or whether from a football level, then certainly I think anything can be alleviated. And I know that obviously Scott West goes out of his way, as does John Lamont, who's the development coach of the Kangaroos that are aligned to us. Certainly, I think they're in almost daily dialogue. Scotty West goes down to the North Melbourne Football Club once a week. He's obviously a full-time coach with us, and we took that situation very seriously 3 or so years ago to go from a part-time coach to full-time, and we think by having that, we get the best of both worlds.
It's interesting you bring up Scott West because highly respected. The authority of the VFL coach, I think, is all important, and he's, in his short time at Werribee, obviously been able to engender respect, not amongst just the playing group, but also back in the relationship with North Melbourne. There would be no question that Gerard Fitzgerald would have the same situation going at North Ballarat. So a strong yet flexible coach at VFL level is key, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, no doubt. And look, you know, obviously North Melbourne Football Club have got a game style. They even have different terminology between each of the AFL clubs. And, you know, the VFL clubs, I believe, do their utmost to try and uphold, as I said, the game style and those sorts of things. And we're no different to anybody else. And I know Westy goes out of his way, as does John Lamont, to make sure that we're working harmoniously and that our guys, when they come down, understand what we're trying to achieve. And there's not a whole lot of difference when you talk about different game styles. People think there is, but there's not actually a whole lot, I don't think, between the AFL clubs.
Good evening, Mark. Anthony Stanguts.
Hello, Anthony.
How are you?
Good, mate. You?
Yeah, not too bad. Just wondering, for our listeners at home, the split of players between Werribee and North Ballarat, how does that work with the North Melbourne Football Club? And do you get any say in which players might be playing for you or might be going to the Roosters?
Yeah, look, that's something that we've worked on the last 3 or 4 years. What does occur is that immediately after the rookie draft, which is around the middle of December, we make sure that we sit down between North Ballarat, ourselves, and obviously the Kangaroos, and discuss where we sit as far as our own team balance and our wants as far as trying to recruit specific type players. The ultimate thing is to make sure we try and give the North Melbourne Football Club players the best opportunity to develop their football, as well as trying to make sure that it develops our list to be as competitive as possible.
One thing, continue, Mark.
Yeah, and certainly it's important that we have a healthy relationship with the North Ballarat Football Club, and I talk to Mark Patterson a lot, and I know that Scotty West also talks to Jared Fitzgerald. So it's important that we have a healthy respect and support one another as best we can.
Mark, Werribee, and speaking of Stoney on a weekly basis, I know that Werribee are desperate to get another flag, to get to the top of the tree and win in the VFL. Have you been put in the situation that other clubs have this year, and I know it really rankles, where players are pulled out on match day or after selection, players that are basically emergencies for AFL sides? They don't play AFL football, yet they are put on hold and can't play for the VFL side. I know that it's happened to Sandringham, it's definitely happened to Williamstown this year, and I know it does annoy.
Well, look, there's been no surprises from our point of view. We all know by Thursday basically what the North Melbourne Football Club side will be. And like every AFL club, if they're North Melbourne are going over to play at Subiaco, then they generally take one traveller. Some AFL clubs take two or three, but North Melbourne generally only take one. And once again, there's no surprises. We know where we stand, and put it this way, there's no one who's been pulled out on match day. So there's been no issue there at all.
Can you understand why teams, even if given advance notice, would be frustrated with 3 players, because there have been up to 3 players taken out of the VFL side and not used in the AFL side?
Yeah, certainly could. And the supporters are the ones who become obviously, and members become quite irritated. You do your best to educate and support the AFL partner. But unfortunately, we haven't had that position for the 5 years that we've been with the Kangaroos. And then lately, before Brad Scott was certainly very, very supportive, and we had no issues at all there.
Another element of the part alignment that I think really works in favour of Werribee and North Ballarat is basically manpower. The fact that there are 2 aligned teams, there's only so many people that North Melbourne can put into either system at Werribee and North Ballarat. And ultimately, when you have a look at the balance of power, it certainly still lies with those 2 clubs, Werribee and North Ballarat, whereas at some other clubs in the past and at present, it does seem as though the named entity, the VFL side, seems to be overrun with AFL contributions. At Werribee, you would still very much feel, I imagine, in control of your club.
Yeah, look, I think North Ballarat and us have been fairly identical over the last few years. Over the last 3 years, we've averaged 6.5 North Melbourne players that have played for us. Hence, obviously, there's an extra 15 or 16 Werribee guys running around. And that's slightly different this year because of the health of the North Melbourne list, and we've averaged around 9.5. But the previous 3 years it was 6.5. So that certainly helped us in attract players to our club. North Melbourne guys that come down, as I said before, come down with the want to win a game of football for the Werribee Football Club, and that's led us to hopefully be more competitive over the last couple of years.
Now, Mark, 2 positive aspects of the alignment as well. One being Brad Mangan, recruited from the Werribee Football Club to North Melbourne last year, but also looking at another player like Ben Ross, delisted from North Melbourne at the end of last year, but deciding to stay with the Tigers for this season.
Yeah, look, certainly Mango is one that we were able to get down from Kyabram and the Murray Bush Rangers in 2010. Unfortunately, he didn't have much for pre-season, suffered a broken jaw at the end of the year. Last year, he had a full year, and hence he's been rookied into the Kangaroos, and I think he's gone better the longer the season's gone. I think his last 3 or 4 weeks have been really good. Benny Ross, certainly Benny was offered to go to numerous other VFL clubs. I think Boxhill might be one of them who we play this week, and Woolley and a few others, but hopefully it says a bit for our club. Rossi enjoyed his time down here as a Kangaroo player, and I still remember the time that he addressed our players last year, the day he was delisted, and to get in front of the group and say, I want to play for the Werribee Footy Club and win a flag. And then that weekend he came out and kicked 4 against Casey, so I still remember that. I know people around the club do as well, and once again it comes back to that word respect.
We're speaking with Mark Penaluna, CEO of the Werribee Football Club. Mark, just a couple of other issues. I did mention, by the way, Coburg standalone or Richmond standalone next year. It's actually 2014 that we'll see Richmond in the VFL. If by 2014-2015 the VFL is a competition dominated by AFL seconds teams, for want of a better term, does that concern you, given that the attitude certainly of Collingwood this year publicly has been scoreboard and ladder are not their main priorities? Does it continue at all being part of a competition that would be dominated by teams for whom winning and losing isn't the be-all and end-all?
Well, finally, what they say and what they mean are two different things. And obviously people spruik about it, it's about development, and obviously, they keep appointing more and more development coaches. But I think any player that crosses the line, coach that goes into the box, they want to win their game of football. And obviously there's times they manipulate things and people play X amount of game time, and every VFL club does that as well now. We all monitor our own game times, and I'd like to think as far as a resource and a technology point of view, a lot of VFL clubs like ours aren't that far behind an AFL club. But look, it does worry us somewhat, but I also think Phil Cleary mentioned the other night, I think when we get to the cut and thrust of it all in a final situation, then certainly we're all out to win it. Obviously Geelong, I think on the back of what they did back in 2002, I think they won the flag. That was on the back of obviously guys like Bartow and Ablett, etc., and that's been the part of their success. So I think people want to win games of football at any level.
And the Foxtel Cup. Well done. Congratulations on making the grand final against Claremont. It hasn't been totally embraced, certainly not in South Australia where the top teams don't get involved. And I was actually really surprised. I watched a game a few weeks ago with Morningside and was shocked that even that Queensland team had 11 of their regular senior players apparently being rested for a Foxtel Cup game. So what do you think of the future of the Foxtel Cup? Has it caused, obviously for you this season, it's been a source of great pride, but has it caused the sort of ructions in fixturing and maybe player or the amount of time games that players play to make it worthwhile?
Yeah, absolutely, mate. We've been rapt to be involved. I think the thing's been very, very well run by Simon Lawton and the guys at the AFL. I know it's caused a whole lot of excitement, both within the group, within our sponsors, and obviously it's a management issue, and it's something that I think Scotty West and our fitness staff have done a terrific job to manage our list as best we can to put out a competitive side and obviously ultimately reach the grand final. So we'll be taking over, I would think, almost our best side to try and win it, and hopefully bring it back home to Victoria. But I really hope that they can continue. Whether it has 4 buys next year or reduced to 2 is what's been spoken about, then so be it. But certainly we're out there to win it and hopefully compete in it next year.
Well, can't thank you enough, Mark, for joining us tonight. Full and frank answers explaining not only the situation that the Werribee Football Club find themselves in, but also answers many questions re the competition going forward. It's been really enlightening, and I thank you again.
No, anytime. Thanks, boys.